Welcome to the HFY Tales channel. Remember to like and subscribe if you like the story. Enjoy and take care.
In the distant future, Earth had become a battleground, ravaged by the relentless conflict between humanity and the formidable Nasari. The skies were a permanent shade of gray, filled with the echoes of war machines and the cries of soldiers rushing into battle. Conversations had long abandoned the notions of peace. Every man and woman was a warrior, clad in armored suits, struggling to reclaim their world from the alien invaders that threatened its very existence. Timothy stood in the heart of the command center, his heart racing as he received his mission briefing. The air was thick with tension, a mixture of fear and determination. He was one of the elite, a soldier trained for the most dangerous missions. Having lost countless friends and loved ones to the Nasari's brutal tactics, he was no stranger to the weight of loss. Yet this mission felt different. "Your target is Rebecca," the commanding officer announced, a stern look etched on his face. "She is a highly dangerous member of the Nasari, capable of devastating destruction. Under no circumstances are you to allow her to escape. She holds vital information that could turn the tide of this war." Timothy's heart sank as he heard the name. A dangerous alien girl, feared and revered, held in a cold, steel prison. But what he didn't expect was the nagging feeling of doubt creeping into his mind. Could this girl, marked as a foe, truly be the monster they all claimed? Throughout his life as a soldier, Timothy had been conditioned to believe that the Nasari were nothing but beasts, merciless and savage. Yet the stories spoke of Rebecca with an almost mythical resonance. He had heard whispers of her beauty, formidable yet enchanting, with striking features that seemed almost otherworldly. He squashed those thoughts as he exited the briefing room, focusing instead on the mission ahead. As he moved through the dimly lit corridors of the command center, he prepared himself mentally for the confrontation that awaited him. Memories of his family flooded his mind, their faces twisted in pain as they had fallen victim to the alien terror. Anger surged in him, fueling his resolve to obliterate the enemy. Yet a voice deep within him urged to reconsider. When he finally arrived at the prison cell, Timothy was taken aback by what he saw. Rebecca was unlike anything he had imagined. She stood in the shadows of the small cell, her eyes shimmering like polished sapphires, glinting with an intelligence that unnerved him. Long, flowing hair draped around her like liquid silver, making her an ethereal vision amidst the grim concrete. Timothy stood frozen for a moment, staring at Rebecca through the thick, transparent barrier of her cell. The lights flickered above, casting shadows that danced across her delicate features. She was the embodiment of both beauty and terror, and it felt surreal to be standing before her as emissary of death. "You're here to execute me," Rebecca remarked, her voice smooth yet laced with an edge of defiance. She met his gaze with an intense look, and Timothy felt a shiver run down his spine. It was not the reaction he expected from a condemned prisoner. She seemed unfazed, even curious. "Order's an order," Timothy replied, trying to sound confident, but the words felt hollow. He clenched his fists, feeling the weight of the weapon strapped to his thigh. "Why should I spare you? You're the enemy." Rebecca chuckled softly, an unsettling sound that danced in the air between them. "And yet, you don't look too eager to carry out that order. Have you ever wondered if things are as simple as us versus them?" Her question caught Timothy off guard, causing him to hesitate. He had always been taught to view the Nasari as faceless foes, but here was a living, breathing being standing before him, challenging his deeply held beliefs. "You're not supposed to be able to speak," he muttered, half to himself. Suddenly, her expression shifted from confidence to vulnerability. "And yet I do. If you truly believe I'm just a monster, then why not pull the trigger now?" Her provocations made his heart race, not with fear, but with an unexpected rush of confusion and curiosity. He took a step forward, lowering his voice. "Why do you fight? What do you gain from this war?" "Survival, like any other species," she answered, her eyes glistening with a strange mixture of sadness and resolve. "But we are not the monsters you paint us to be. Every action has a reason, and you've only heard one side of the story. Your side is the one that destroys lives." Timothy shot back, his anger barely contained. "And yours obliterates entire worlds," Rebecca countered. The force of her words struck him harder than any blast from a weapon. Timothy felt the foundation of his training begin to crumble under the weight of her truth. He took a deep breath, forcing his emotions to stabilize. The anger that fueled him began to give way to an uncomfortable realization. Perhaps his perceptions were narrow, forged in the heat of battle without considering the broader implications of their war. As the tension filled the room, an alarm suddenly blared, tearing them from their exchange. The command had issued a code red. Timothy's instincts kicked in as he spun toward the door, but then he turned back to Rebecca. "I can't just let you go," he said. "Then help me," she urged, her voice urgent and pleading. "Together we can find a way to end this war. I can show you what the Nisari are truly capable of, what we want. But you have to trust me." Timothy felt the world tilt on its axis. The choice before him was overwhelming. Kill this girl, this living embodiment of the enemy, or take a risk and explore a path he had never considered. In that moment, his resolve wavered. A part of him understood the weight of Rebecca's words. There was more at stake than just a personal vendetta. There was a chance for understanding, for connection in the midst of chaos. As a soldier, he had always marched forward with a singular goal: victory at all costs. But now, victory felt meaningless without considering whom he would leave behind. Before he could answer, the station trembled, signaling that danger was coming. He reached for his weapon, heart racing. "What's happening?" "The facility is under attack. We have to move now," Rebecca urged, desperation blooming in her voice. Timothy made his decision. "I'll help you, but we need a plan." Rebecca smiled, a hint of hope igniting her features. "Then let's put our differences aside and work together. We can find a way out. But first, you need to believe that I'm not your enemy." In that moment, with the alarm blaring and chaos descending upon them, Timothy took a step back, feeling the gravity of his choice settle around him. He was prepared to tear down the barriers that had divided them, to forge an unlikely alliance that could potentially save both their races. As the chaos erupted outside the prison cell, Timothy felt the adrenaline coursing through his veins. This was a war zone, a place where choices often led to irrevocable consequences. Yet here he was, standing in front of the enemy, a decision looming over him that threatened to alter the course of his life. "Quick, follow me," Rebecca urged, her voice cutting through the cacophony of alarms and distant explosions. She didn't wait for Timothy to respond. She slipped through the door that had just overridden its lock mechanism, thanks to an earlier electrical outage triggered by the assault. Timothy hesitated only a moment before following her. They navigated the dim corridors of the facility, scanning for signs of danger. He struggled to reconcile the image of Rebecca, the girl who had been painted as ruthless and lethal, with the person who had just sought his help in escaping a dire fate. As they rounded a corner, they were met with a small group of soldiers who had been dispatched to quell the breach. Timothy's instincts kicked in, but before he could react, Rebecca stepped in front of him, raising her hands in a gesture of peace. "Wait!" she shouted, her voice resonating with authority. "We don't have to fight." The soldiers aimed their weapons at both of them, their expressions filled with a mix of confusion and suspicion. "Back away from the alien," one shouted, readying his firearm. Timothy's heart raced. He was torn between his instincts to protect Rebecca and the harsh reality that turning himself into a traitor could lead to his doom as well. He stepped forward. "No, we're not here to cause harm. We leave," Rebecca interjected, her voice low yet firm. "I can handle this." Timothy watched, astonished, as she approached the soldiers cautiously. The tension was palpable as she closed the distance, her eyes locked onto theirs. There was something about her gaze, an ethereal intensity that seemed to connect with their very souls. "Listen to me," she said, her voice softening, though laced with urgency. "I'm not your enemy anymore. We can find a better way. We need to focus on the real threat outside these walls." Timothy marveled as the tension began to ebb from the soldiers. They still looked wary, but confusion had replaced their aggression. He could feel the shift in the air, the fragile hope that perhaps they could find common ground. "Stand down," one of the soldiers finally commanded, lowering his weapon. "If what you say is true, then we all might be in danger." Rebecca nodded, and Timothy felt a sense of relief wash over him. They pressed past the soldiers, quickly making their way toward the exit. As they moved, Timothy couldn't help but glance at Rebecca, awestruck by her charisma and determination. The way she carried herself was both graceful and fierce, a true warrior unmatched by any he had ever encountered. Once outside the building, the chaos of battle erupted around them. Explosions rang in the distance, and the once familiar landscape had transformed into a gruesome battleground. Smoke billowed from places where machines had cracked the earth, and the sounds of war served as a grim reminder of the world they inhabited. "We need to get to the rendezvous point," Rebecca insisted, her voice steady amidst the chaos. Timothy nodded, suddenly aware of the urgency in their situation. As they raced through the debris and twisted metal, Timothy gained a sense of clarity. Each step beside Rebecca made him more attuned to the reality of their circumstances. He had long viewed the Nasari as mere enemies. Now he saw Rebecca as a person, someone who felt, thought, and dared to dream of a life beyond war. "Why are you helping me?" Timothy ventured, struggling to keep pace as they ducked behind a destroyed transport vehicle. "Because I believe in a better future," Rebecca replied. She looked at him, eyes alight with passion. "A future where we can coexist. There are those in our ranks who want this war to end, but there's also a faction that thrives on conflict." Her words stuck with Timothy, echoing in his mind as they continued to navigate the chaos. He had long since branded the Nasari as invaders, but Rebecca was challenging everything he thought he knew. Her unwavering spirit ignited a flicker of hope within him. They finally reached a hidden alcove behind a crumbled wall, their breaths heavy from the rush. As they paused, Rebecca turned to Timothy, her eyes filled with purpose. "If we're going to make it through this, we have to trust each other. I need your help to unlock our potential together." Timothy studied her expression, the sincerity radiating off her. This wasn't just about survival. It was about something deeper, about bridging the gap between two worlds that had long been defined by hatred and mistrust. "What do you mean?" he asked, still processing the weight of her request. "The Nasari have abilities that can amplify what you might already possess," Rebecca explained, her voice steady and resolute. "We can work together to harness that power. If we survive today, I can show you how to unlock it." The idea felt foreign yet exhilarating. Timothy considered the possibilities. He was a soldier trained to fight. But what if he could evolve into something more, something that could truly help end this conflict? He felt a surge of purpose and determination swell within him. "Then let's make it happen." With renewed resolve, Timothy nodded, standing shoulder to shoulder with Rebecca. They were no longer just a soldier and an enemy. They were allies. Two individuals willing to challenge the narrative of war and forge a new path for their people. The sounds of war continued to rage around them, echoing through the ruins of the facility as Timothy and Rebecca formulated a plan. He watched as Rebecca scanned their surroundings, her senses acutely attuned to the chaos that enveloped them. Every few moments, she would look towards the skies, gauging the threats that might emerge from the shadows. "Follow my lead," she instructed, her voice firm and commanding. "We need to move fast. The longer we stay here, the more vulnerable we become." Timothy nodded, his pulse quickening. He could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him. Yet with Rebecca by his side, uncertainty began to dissipate. There was an unspoken bond forming between them, a shared commitment to change the narrative of destruction that had defined their worlds for so long. As they maneuvered through the wreckage, Rebecca shared details of the Nasari's true motivations, painting a picture that contradicted everything Timothy had been taught. "The Council wants peace," she insisted, "but there are radicals among us that wish to see the extermination of humanity. This war has been fueled by fear and misinformation on both sides." Timothy bit his lip, taking in her words as they crouched behind a fallen wall. The familiar enemy he'd battled for so long now appeared complex and multifaceted. "If there are factions in your ranks, How do we stop them? He asked. There are multiple ways, Rebecca replied, her expression resolute. But first, we need to regroup with my allies. They are hiding in the outskirts, waiting for my signal. Together, we can build a resistance strong enough to confront the radicals. Timothy felt a sense of urgency mixed with fear. And what if they don't trust us? I'm a human soldier. It's hard to forget what we've done to each other. Rebecca placed a hand on Timothy's arm, her touch sending a surge of warmth through him. If they see us working together, it might change their perception. It's about creating hope where there was once only animosity. They set off, sprinting through the devastation and avoiding skirmishes with enemy forces. Each time Timothy glanced at Rebecca, he saw her determination reflected in her every stride. It was infectious, pushing him to fight for something larger than himself. After navigating the ruins for what felt like hours, they finally arrived at the designated meeting point, a small alcove hidden within a wooded area, away from the chaos. The air was thick with apprehension. Allies awaited but were adamant about secrecy. Once Timothy and Rebecca stepped into the clearing, a group of Nasari warriors emerged from the shadows. They held their weapons at the ready, their features hardened by the war, and Timothy felt a rush of trepidation at being surrounded by the very beings he had been trained to fear. Rebecca advanced, raising her hands to signal peace. "I've brought a human soldier, a friend. We need to talk." "Why should we trust him?" One of the warriors snapped. His gaze narrowed. "You cannot be serious, Rebecca. A human." His tone dripped with skepticism, and Timothy felt every eye on him, judging and weighing his worth. "Because trust is what we need right now," Rebecca asserted, her voice rising above the tension. "If we work together, we can create a coalition strong enough to dismantle the radicals on both sides. We've all suffered. Our futures depend on cooperation." The warriors murmured amongst themselves, their expressions a mix of doubt and curiosity. Timothy's heart raced as he took a step forward, uncertainty gnawing at him. He had entered this war with only one intention, to fight. Now he was asking others to reconsider their perceptions based on the possibility of peace. "I may be a soldier," Timothy began, capturing their attention, "but I've stood in the ashes of this war, and I understand the cost it has taken. I've seen loved ones lost and lives shattered. I'm here, partly because I must, but mostly because I want something different. I want there to be a future, free of bloodshed." The weight of his confession hung heavily in the cool evening air. For a moment, silence enveloped him, and Timothy felt exposed, stripped of his armor and primal instincts. But then Rebecca stepped beside him, proudly standing as a testament to the alliance they were forging. The lead warrior's expression softened, and Timothy sensed a breakthrough. "What do you propose, human?" he asked, skepticism still lingering but noticeably diminished. "There are radicals among our ranks who benefit from this war," Timothy countered. "We need to find them, expose them, and work together to dismantle this cycle of hatred." Rebecca nodded, grabbing the attention of the group once more. "If we align, we can amplify our strengths and knowledge of each other's cultures and weaknesses. Together, we can be the force that leads our people to peace." After a long pause, the warriors exchanged glances, their tension easing as murmurs of agreement began to circulate. Timothy's heart swelled with a mixture of hope and adrenaline. Perhaps they could reshape the future of their worlds, hand in hand, instead of as enemies. The lead warrior finally spoke, a glimmer of resolve in his eyes. "Very well, but know that you will have to prove yourselves. Trust is earned, not given freely. We will observe your actions closely." Timothy and Rebecca exchanged a glance, a silent agreement passing between them. They had taken a drastic step forward, one that could alter the course of history, but the journey ahead would not be without its challenges. As they began to strategize with the Nasari, a newfound determination pulsed within Timothy. This was no longer just about survival. It was about forging bonds, dismantling hatred, and building a future where the lines of war could finally blur into understanding. As the sun began to set, casting dim hues across the horizon, Timothy and Rebecca prepared for their final stand against the radical faction, threatening their tenuous alliance. Having gathered Nisari warriors, they devised a plan to confront those who sought to maintain the war's destructive cycle. "We need to coordinate an attack on their hideout," Timothy said, addressing both his human comrades and Rebecca's Nisari allies. "If we can catch them off guard, we'll have a chance to subdue them before they escalate the situation." Rebecca stood by his side, her presence a steadying force. "But remember, our goal isn't just to fight, but to understand why they act as they do. We must represent something different, a connection between our races." As night fell, they moved stealthily, the air thick with tension and anticipation. Timothy glanced at Rebecca, feeling the unexpected force of attraction that had built between them. In the heat of battle planning, their earlier connection had deepened, intertwining their fates in an inexplicable way. They approached the radical faction's hideout, a crumbling fortress on the outskirts of the city. Timothy's heart raced as they stealthily took positions. The atmosphere was ripe with uncertainty. This battle could either solidify the fragile alliance or send their nation spiraling back into chaos. Suddenly, a loud explosion ripped through the night, launching chaos into the air. Timothy's instincts kicked in as they sprang into action. The Nisari warriors fought valiantly alongside Timothy, but amidst the turmoil, he noticed Rebecca fall back under an enemy's attack. Heart pounding, he rushed to her side. "Are you okay?" he asked, pulling her close as they found temporary cover behind a destroyed wall. Rebecca nodded but grimaced. "We need to push through. We can't let them escape and spread their ideals." In that moment, a surge of adrenaline coursed through him, driving Timothy closer to her. The fire of battle ignited not only his instincts to protect, but also an unexpected craving to unite with her. "We can't just fight. We need to show them what alliance truly means." As they engaged in combative motion, a fierce look of determination filled Rebecca's eyes. "You're right. We need to showcase the strength of our connection, both in battle and in the bond we share." Timothy understood. The true power lay in their mutual trust, but it transcended their immediate surroundings. It required their connection to flourish, to synergize their energy. This was more than mere combat. It sparked a primal necessity, a desire that thrived amid chaos. In the heat of the fight, as they dispatched foes one by one, the chemistry between them became palpable. Each glance shared, each brush against the other's body stirred within them a longing that could no longer be ignored. As the tide of battle swung in their favor, Timothy reached for Rebecca, grasping her hand. "Together we can end this," he promised, and as their eyes locked, a powerful connection ignited between them, propelling them into an intimate moment even amidst the violence of war. They stood close, hearts pounding in sync, and the realization settled in. Their fates had intertwined atop the battlefield, igniting their primal instincts. The energy sparked a desire that demanded expression, a driving passion that culminated in a deep kiss, a beautiful union of two races, both fighters and lovers, echoing their commitment to one another. Feeling the surge of each other's essences mingling, Timothy and Rebecca embraced fully, their bodies intertwining in a rhythm that transcended the chaos surrounding them, a mating ritual born from the fire of battle. As the last of the radicals fell, their union solidified not just their partnership, but also the hope of linking their races. The warriors around them paused, recognizing that this moment was not merely a victory, but the birth of a new alliance, grounded in love and trust. "We did it," Timothy whispered, pulling away just enough to look into Rebecca's eyes. "Yes," she replied, breathing heavily, a smile forming on her lips. "This is just the beginning. Together, we can lead a new way forward." With the remnants of battle trailing behind them, Timothy and Rebecca stood as symbols of a hope for the future, a new possibility fueled by their bond, forever uniting their worlds. In the days that followed the battle, the air buzzed with a newfound energy. Timothy and Rebecca emerged as champions of a fragile alliance, symbolizing the hope they had forged through struggle and intimacy. Gatherings of both human and Nisari began to take place in the once war-torn citadel, where discussions replaced conflict, and the flames of diplomacy flared where weapons had once been drawn. They stood in front of a diverse crowd, addressing everyone who had witnessed the power of their union. Timothy looked out at the faces, an amalgamation of species filled with hope and unease, but mostly with anticipation for what lay ahead. "Today marks a new beginning," he declared, the emotions swelling within him. "Together, we've not only overcome our enemies, but have realized the strength that comes from understanding one another. No longer shall we operate from fear alone." Rebecca stepped beside him, her presence instantly commanding the crowd's respect. "This alliance is not just between our two nations. It is a bond born of love and trust, demonstrating that our differences are not to be feared but celebrated. We can build a future where both our cultures thrive together." Timothy felt the warmth of her hand in his, their connection a palpable anchor amid the swirling uncertainties of the future. Their journey had shown them the cost of conflict, but it had also illuminated the path to peace, a path they would carve together. As their talk continued, a sense of unity began to flourish in the air, the lines of separation blurring like the dusk merging with dawn. But it wasn't just diplomatic discussions driving their momentum. It was the bond that Timothy and Rebecca had formed, a bond that transcended the traditional ties of love, rooted deeply in their shared goals and aspirations. In quiet moments, when tensions faded, Timothy and Rebecca would steal away from the crowds, retreating to secluded spots under the stars. Each night, they would engage in passionate embraces, their bodies entwined, a living affirmation of their partnership. They explored the depths of their connection, discovering not only one another's desires, but also the essence of their cultures through touch, emotions, and intimate conversation. As weeks turned into months, the changes solidified. Political alliances were made, and treaties drafted, all while the sanctity of Timothy and Rebecca's bond radiated hope throughout both races. Their journey encapsulated the crescendo of understanding and the realization that love could bridge the most profound divides. On a particular night, as the stars overhead twinkled like the dreams they had begun to weave together, Timothy held Rebecca in his arms, feeling a sense of completion. "You've changed everything for me," he murmured, looking deeply into her mesmerizing eyes. "And you for me," she whispered back, her voice filled with warmth. "Together, we are proof that love can conquer hate." They leaned in, sealing their promises with a soft kiss, a reminder of their journey and a vow to continue fighting for peace. In each other, they had found a home, a light in the darkness, a new measure of hope not only for themselves, but for the entire universe. As the world around them began to heal and shift toward collaboration, they recognized one immutable truth. They had been chosen for more than just a mission of destruction. They were destined to reshape the future, fusing their strengths and hearts together to forge a brighter horizon.